Hey guys, what is up? Today I just wanted to share one of my most recent projections with you all. So this one, it started out a little bit different than most of them do. So typically for me, I reach the vibrational state, I roll out of body, and I find myself on my bedroom floor in what people call the real time zone, or it's sort of a duplicate of the physical world. So in this particular case, the vibrations hit just like they do. And as soon as I started trying to roll out of body, it felt like I was grabbed from behind and shoved into this very constricting, tight rubber tube, and then I was just shot backwards at an incredible speed. Everything just went black, and I just felt this backwards momentum while I feel like I'm being pressed in from all sides. And interestingly enough, this has happened before. This is the third time. And what I've come to find, and I didn't put this together after the last two experiences, but being three experiences now like this, is that these fast backwards motion experiences where I'm being shot through a constricting rubber tube, they always shoot me out into what people call a consensus reality. It's a place where people who've passed on, who've passed away, who used to live on the earth, now are residing in this afterlife type scenario. And in this particular case, it was the same. I shot out in the middle of this town, and I'm standing on this street that I don't recognize. And almost the moment that I start looking around, a friend of mine pops into my head. He's a guy that used to be in a band, used to play guitar with me a few years ago. And cancer took him a couple years back. And the moment that I thought about him, here he comes walking down the street. And he looked just the same as he used to. Younger than me, he's got his combat boots on and this goofy grin on his face. And the very first thing he says to me is he says, "Hey, cancer gets you too?" I said, "No, I'm just visiting here." And then he says in his typical fashion, says, "Bullshit." And then we just both crack up laughing, and we laugh for a minute or so, and I don't go on about it, and I don't try to explain, this is how I got here, and this is why I'm here. I wanted to just, start talking to him and ask him questions. And so I asked him, I said, "So what is it like to be here? What's it like in the afterlife?" And he said, "Well, when I got here, it was exactly the way that I expected it to be." And let me back up, actually. So I should mention, this guy, he grew up in a very religious family, and his wife and his kids were religious. I never actually got the idea or the impression that he was as devoted to it or into it or had, subscribed to this religion as deeply as his family had. But regardless, this was his environment as he was growing up. And so he says, when I first got here, everything was exactly the way that I expected it to be. The way that everybody told me it would be. And he said, but then you know what? I was here for a year or so, and I just started to get bored. And I was immediately reminded of Robert Monroe. So if you've read Robert Monroe's books, he talks about how he, at one point, goes where he calls home. He goes home, and it's this cloudy, beautiful area where everybody's just happy and smiling and running around and playing games, and there's music playing. And he spends a little bit of time there, and he just realizes everything's just like this endless loop. There's no progress, there's nothing new, no innovation. It's just the same thing over and over again. And he says, that's why I came here, because I needed some break in the monotony. And he talks about how he could never go home and be satisfied with home again. So it reminded me of that when this guy's talking, and he's saying, I got here, it was exactly the way I expected it to be, and then I got bored, and I started thinking to myself, how can this be what I'm supposed to experience? If this is the afterlife, this is forever, and I'm bored after a year, how can that possibly be like somebody's grand design? How can that be the intent of, my purpose for the rest of forever? And so he said, as soon as I started thinking about this, I started questioning. And as soon as I started questioning, things just sort of started to fall apart, and I found myself here. And he points around at the town, and there's other people, and he says, this is a place where we all are just trying to figure out what to do next. And so, I asked him about his family, and I said, well, do you miss your family? And that's got to be really, really difficult because you have young kids. And he said, you don't miss people here. And I thought, well, that's kind of harsh. I'm pretty sure that I would miss my kids if I had passed on. And he says, well, no, you don't get it. You don't miss people here because there's no walls. And so I probed a little bit more. I said, what do you mean by there's no walls? And he said, the physical world puts walls around everything. There's distance between people that separates them. There's physical bodies. There's the inability or lack of desire to communicate. There's all of these different things that put walls between us. But he said, when you're in this state, there's no walls. He said, if I think about my kids, I know what they're feeling. I experience them growing up. It's like I'm part of them rather than watching them. And he says, that's 10 times better than it could have been while I was there on Earth. Obviously, they don't have that same perception of him, and that's got to be an incredibly difficult thing. But he explained that this is why you don't miss people when you're in that state. You experience it more intensely, and you're more directly connected than you've ever been before. So that was about it. I always say this. It could have been just a hallucination generated by my own mind, trying to prepare me for things to come, trying to deal with with unknowns, with things that I have a desire to know about that I don't have any way to experience. Or I could have really just seen this friend from a few years back. Regardless, it was good talking with him, and it was an interesting experience. It was an interesting thing to think about how if you expect something to be some way, it'll be that way. I've experienced that myself. This very thought responsive environment, it adapts to what you expect it to be, and it appears that is the case with the afterlife as well. I'll be interested in seeing if I can run into him again and see if I can find out what he's decided to do once he decides to leave this consensus reality community of people trying to figure out where to go next. So anyways, that's it. It ended right after that. I got pulled back, and that's it. So as always, like, comment, subscribe, help me build this community. I'll talk to you guys again soon.